Okay, so I have another subscriber comment that's going to be a large part of this video, but there was a couple of things that I wanted to address before I completely delve into what they were talking about, and that, in fact, it ties into what they were saying in the comment quite perfectly, in my opinion. But I had somebody not too long ago. It's been a while back. Accused me of only approving comments that agreed with me and not approving stepper comments, which is actually not true. I've approved quite a number of comments that are critical of me, and unless they're spamming. Now, when someone's going to leave me 100 comments with a whole lot of ugly profanity and personal insults over and over and over again, and then attack other commenters and everything else like that, generally I don't publish that because it's a waste of my time and it's a waste of everybody else's time who comes to this channel to share their experiences about how bad AA has been for them. So I'm not going to deal with a fucking troll or somebody like that. But it is interesting how every single critical comment I've gotten over the however many years I've been doing this, 6 or 7 years, never actually addresses the topic at hand that I'm talking about. It never addresses the subject matter of each video. It's generally on a personal attack level. It's an ad hominem attack. It's, everything from the way I look to the fact that, well, you just have a resentment. And by the way, that is one reason why I don't use that phrase about anything that I'm feeling, you have a resentment, any longer, because that was a way that the AA cult, it seemed to me like, minimized people's real emotions and real feelings about a situation by, it was almost a casual way to brush off your concerns or brush off what was bothering you. Well, you sound like you just got a resentment, In other words, you don't fucking matter. As long as I can appear like a big shot guru and beat you down, that's really what the whole entire program, from all the evidence I've seen over the years, is about. But it is interesting to me that if you really truly believed in the AA cult like that, you would think that somebody somewhere in all this time, and in my time in AA as well, would have some sort of A game they could bring to the table is in terms of trying to refute what I'm saying. For example, the people who swear up and down that AA saved their life, I could tell you that claiming something saved your life and proving something saved your life is two different things entirely. As a matter of fact, that's one of the huge criticisms I have about AA in general, is that I have not seen one thing that AA accomplishes that cannot be accomplished in an even better method of accomplishing without it. I have myself personally been able to quit drinking successfully without a spiritual experience, without doing any steps. As a matter of fact, I did all those steps, never had any spiritual experiences, and I have a large degree of skepticism about people who claim to have had a spiritual experience in AA because I never saw any personal evidence for that. And I do realize that personal evidence is not necessarily valid evidence, and I'm going to get to that in just a second. But nobody has ever been able to demonstrate for me that AA actually does anything that can't be accomplished elsewhere. You see, if you really had a market on God, and you really had a market on spirituality, and there was no virtually other solution but AA for people who had a severe drinking problem, there are two troubling things that that I would want to look at. One is the fact that AA has a massive failure rate. It has a very poor success rate. And again, I hear people all the time, including people in videos and other things, they'll say something like, AA works. Well, what does that mean, AA works? Does that mean that people who sit in meetings for the next 20 years regurgitating the same lines over and over again is your definition of working? I think oftentimes, to do a little bit of a rip off of Wittgenstein, I can't remember exactly, that we don't need to redefine terms, but we need to clearly define terms. If you're going to use a declarative statement like AA works, you would kind of need to demonstrate that to me in a way that it works. And then the other point I was going to make is it would have to work in a way that's unique only to AA, that has not worked for anyone who had a drinking problem outside of AA. You see, if you can point to evidence of people, like a subscriber not too long ago linked a comment to my video that showed studies where people were able to successfully quit drinking on their own, then that proves that AA doesn't have any kind of special solution. In other words, there's nothing about AA that can't be duplicated in the real world without steps, without sponsors, without reading the same book over and over again. In other words, there are people who have serious drinking problems who are able to overcome those serious drinking problems without the help of some spiritual experience. Now, I know what AA is going to engage in here. It's not just the no true Scotsman fallacy they engage in with this line of reasoning when they say, well, those people weren't really alcoholic to begin with. They're engaging in a lesser-known fallacy called special pleading. And special pleading is when you make an exemption that doesn't apply to the real world. I even talked about that in early videos, and I had no idea what the special pleading fallacy was exactly. You see it sometimes in a religious discussion, for example, when people use the Kalam argument and they say something like, well, everything that exists had to have a creator. And you point out, and I don't want to derail this discussion to religion, but if you point out, well, who created God? He didn't need a creator. Okay, you created a special exemption. AA engages in this fallacy quite often. What they do is if something doesn't fit into their narrow-minded worldview, they create an exemption for why it can't fit into their narrow-minded worldview. In other words, well, those people weren't alcoholics, they were just hard drinkers. I think it's really comical that the AA Big Book talks about people who can drink themselves to death, lose their jobs, lose their families, lose their homes and everything else, but they're not really alcoholic. There's only the serious alcoholic. Yes, that is a no true Scotsman, but it's also a special plead. It's saying the real rules of the world that comport to reality don't apply to people in AA because we're a special case, thereby special pleading. But one major problem with special pleading is it's impossible to prove any validity to that. Okay, there has been no scientific evidence whatsoever that there is a difference between a hard drinker and a so-called real alcoholic. There's never been a demonstration of that. There is no blood test. There is no CAT scan or MRI or brain scan or surgery or anything else underneath the microscope or underneath the surgeon's scalpel that demonstrates there's any difference between people who are identifying as alcoholic in AA and regular people with alcohol use disorder, which is the more accurate scientific term in today's world. And sadly enough, the addiction field has not caught up with today's world. Sadly enough, the addiction field has not caught up with the modern world as of yet, because it's still pushing this nonsense as some kind of viable alternative for people who have drinking problems, real drinking problems. What is funny, and this is another thing that I had not thought of, but I just decided to throw it out since it just crossed my mind. If you go to AA and you have a serious drinking problem, and you stop, and you say all the right things, and you say exactly what you're supposed to say, and you have one of the popular guru sponsors, and all those other things, everybody just accepts that you are an alcoholic, right? Everybody just accepts it. Nobody says to somebody when they say, oh, I have 90 days today, and I'm about to get a red chip tonight, and I'm doing what my sponsor says, and I'm reading the Big Book. Nobody ever says to that person, I don't know, though, are you really an alcoholic? Are you sure you're not a hard drinker? They don't do that. They accept at face value that you said you're an alcoholic. But if you leave AA and you don't get drunk again, then they can always use their little special plead fallacy. Well, you weren't a real alcoholic to begin with, or they'll just tell you you're going to get drunk again and then jails, institutions, or death. But they have established no claim, no validity to that. The very fact that they accepted at face value like that would point to the fact of what I'm trying to get at through the whole thing. It's all made up. Okay? But back to what I began on and what I was talking about is that when people say AA saved my life, and I say AA has killed a lot of people, it doesn't, personal experience itself does not weigh in as evidence. What weighs in as evidence when you have conflicting testimonies, when you have conflicting ideas, is best determined by applying logic and evidence. And I even had somebody who was an AA guru on here one time comment to me, and he said, well, I don't believe in logic. Well, logic is not something you get to choose to not believe in. Logic can be demonstrated in the real world. Logic can be demonstrated in real time, unlike God that you talk about. Logic I can demonstrate with real examples in real situations, in real scenarios. I can prove logic exists. I don't need to believe in logic. It's not, it's not a faith claim. Okay, people who apply the rules of logic or who look at logic are not doing it out of a motivation of faith. They're doing it out of a motivation of what they know to be true, what comports with reality. Okay, so it's not like you could just say, well, if logic doesn't line up with my position, then I just don't believe in it. Okay, that's not how logic works. But I have yet to see one single person who was a real hardcore AA defender. I have yet to see one single person who has trolled my comments or in AA meetings in all the years I was in AA, over 11 years. I never saw anybody bring an A game to prove why AA works. AA people seem to think that personal testimony of saying, AA saved my life is evidence. Well, you would have to conclusively establish that there was no other solution to save your life before that could even be demonstrated to be a reality, which we don't have no way of doing because we really don't know if these people are really sober. We don't really know if these people had what kind of drinking problems they really had. I had a sponsor one time that his own family told me he never even had a drinking problem, okay? There's no way to demonstrate that you could not be saved by any other solution other than AA. So therefore, you don't really get to submit AA saved my life as evidence. Real evidence is something that can be measured, observed, and can comport with the reality that we live in. Now, I've had people try to do metaphysical Jordan Peterson bullshit at me and say, well, what is reality? What is truth? Do you believe that there is an actual reality? Can we 100% know what it is? No, but we do know that if you step outside of a 2-story building, you fall. We know that if I get cut, I'm going to bleed. We know that if I'm exposed to viruses, I can get sick. AA does not have some monopoly on reality and truth or a special plead where alcoholics exist in a separate universe that doesn't play by the same rules as every other universe. In real world, real time, there's nobody who's been exempt from law or exempt from old age or death or anything else due to being an alcoholic. You can't demonstrate to me an alcoholic even exists because when something doesn't have any evidence and it relies on shaky personal testimony, then it's going to be like what Christopher Hitchens said. What can be asserted without evidence can kind of be dismissed without evidence. But if you ask me to argue on behalf of something, if you ask me to argue on something I totally believed in, whatever it is, and you said, I want you to defend that because I think you're full of shit, I wouldn't come at you with, well, you're obviously a garbage person. I wouldn't come at you with, well, you're just dishonest. I wouldn't come at you with, you don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. I would come to you with a prepared case for evidence in favor of why I believe what I believe, if there is evidence to support it. Oftentimes people think in these debates that a debate is about winning. A debate is not really necessarily about winning. A debate is about presenting your case. Presenting your case eloquently enough that it's convincing enough to the people listening. Unfortunately, in the society we live in, rhetoric is sometimes more easily listened to and believed and swallowed than an actual presentation. But if I was going to make a presentation, I would start with evidence that backs it up. I would have scientific proof. I would have something other than insults and character attacks. When you're telling me that you have been touched by the hand of God, what was a flimsy reed is now the hand of God. When you sit in meetings and tell me that you know what God's will for you is, something that is a dishonest claim because you can't possibly demonstrate that, and you would be claiming to know something that the majority of the human population does not know. You would be claiming to know more than priests, than ministers, than philosophers and scientists and everybody else on earth. You would be claiming to know something that has never been conclusively proven. So if you're going to claim something like that, you would have to provide real world evidence and demonstration. I never see anybody doing that. I never see anybody who comes to my channel or in AA meetings have any kind of A game at me when they come at me with the personal attacks or something like that. They never refute my claim. Okay, they always resort to childish Having gaffes again. I told you, I got the same birthday as Biden, and that happens. They always resort to the same childish, petty insults. I can say from my own personal experience and from the evidence that I looked into about AA that there is nothing about AA that's ever satisfied me as being real or true. I didn't leave AA because I was convinced it was false. I left AA because I was fed up with the lies, the hypocrisy, the mean-spiritedness, and all of that. But the more I dug into AA itself, the more I started digging into what is said in that book, what I personally witnessed, and yes, personal witness is not necessarily evidence, but when I started digging into the history of AA, and I started looking into everything about AA, I did not find one piece of evidence that even conclusively hinted at a possibility of AA having any validity whatsoever. I just find it interesting that people who come here to attack people in AA, like I saw somebody had posted on Burn the Stigmas channel, name me which step is bad for you. All 12 of them are bad because they urge you to be a helpless, dependent slave on an imaginary higher power and tells you you can't get sober without it. All 12 steps are bad, but you come at me with these little, or at people who are critical of AA with these little mean-spirited, giant, snidey little shitty comments. You don't come with proof. You don't come with evidence because you have none. Okay? So this leads me to the subscriber comment because I think this is very important. I guess the title for this video should be AA does not understand how evidence works. When you have a 5% success rate, and again, that's shaky because nobody can define to me what a success rate is. Is it people who sit in meetings for 20 years? Is it people who get sober in AA and just never go back? What is AA works? What is AA success rate? You can't even demonstrate to me what that is. I see people all the time saying, AA works. What do you mean by works? Show me something concrete. Show me something that I can tangible to prove it works. Just saying AA works is just a baseless assertion. So let me get to the comment here. My questions, they write, for Big Book Thumpers are as follows. And this is great. In fact, I never, in all the time I've been making videos, I never thought of coming up with an idea like this, but this is great. If we put stock in the disease model, in order to remove the moral stigma and shame from an individual's struggle with compulsive behaviors related to substances, then what is the purpose of a moral inventory if not to invoke shame? You go to AA and you're told, just cause you've done some bad things doesn't make you a bad person, We're all just sick people trying to get better. Just cause I did bad things doesn't mean I'm a bad person. I have a disease, and all that. But then they tell you to do a moral inventory where they tell you everything that you've ever done is your fault. They tell you every bad decision you've ever made is your fault. They tell you you're selfish, you're self-centered, you're driven by all these 100 forms of fears and character defects and moral failings and all this other stuff that only God can remove in 6 and 7 step. So what is the purpose of a moral inventory if I'm a sick guy trying to get well? What's the purpose of an actual moral inventory? Because moral inventories are all about shame. I mean, it actually says in the big book, your pride got wounded if your wife is screwing around on you. If somebody steals money from you, it's your ego that got ruined. What a crock of shit. I mean, I'm not some kind of Dr. fucking Ruth or some kind of marriage counselor here, but I would say that if you have a partner or you have a spouse or you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever it is and they cheat on you, it's not the sexual act itself that's the big fucking problem. It's a matter of trust. It's a matter of trust. It's a matter of your spouse, boyfriend, significant other, girlfriend, whomever, looking you in the face and saying, I'm being honest with you about something, and they're lying to you. It's the fact that they're looking you in the eye and lying to you. That is the issue there. It has nothing to do with pride, ego, and all that other stuff. The moral inventory is to shame you. So that's one great question. They go on to say, is a spiritual awakening quantifiable? And if not, how can it be guaranteed? Perfect question. I never have thought of that in all the time I've been doing these videos. They tell you if you do all these steps, you'll have a spiritual experience. You'll be rocketed off into the 4th dimension. You'll time travel through whatever the fuck it is. You won't even be on cloud 9. You'll be on cloud fucking 15, right? And then if you say, well, is that going to be guaranteed if I do all 12 of these steps? And they'll tell you, absolutely. Then you do all 12 of the steps and it doesn't happen. They'll say, well, you didn't want it bad enough. You weren't willing to get honest. You weren't this, you weren't that. If you have to make a bunch of excuses for why someone didn't get a spiritual experience, it might be because it doesn't exist. You don't have any evidence for it. If I told everybody, if you ride that fucking roller coaster at this fairground, you will have a ride of your life like you can't ever imagine again. You'll never forget it. That's provable. That is quantifiable. That is not something that you can say, well, if you don't ride the roller coaster and enjoy it as much as I did, it's because you're not an honest person, So, how can you guarantee I'm going to have a spiritual experience? Especially in a room full of people that I used to see claim to have spiritual experiences, and then I'd see them picking up white chips drunk again, and then I'd see them disappear, or they'd become people like myself, gaff again. They would become like me. They'd become people who were always falling off the wagon, who were always relapsing, and who were looked at with mockery and scorn and shame, even though they're sick people trying to get better. How does that work? Okay. How do you know, the next question they write, that addiction is lifelong? And do you think that committing to the identity of alcoholic and addict could be connected to the pessimistic projected outcome? Oh, that's a good question. How do you know it's lifelong? How do you know if you don't go to meetings for the rest of your life that you're always going to be sick? What proof do you have of that? What proof do you have that I've been sitting in this room saying this same shit for 20 years, and if I stop doing it, I'm going to be drunk tomorrow? How can you prove that? How do you know? And the second part of that question is very important as well. Telling people they're diseased, telling people they're sick, telling people they're immoral, telling people they're useless, telling people that they're nothing without AA and God. Couldn't that lead to a very pessimistic outcome? Could it not lead to relapses? Because after all, my situation is fucking hopeless. I can say from personal testimony, I felt like that. This is all I've got to look forward to for the rest of my life. I can never have my life back. I'm either going to be drunk or here. Great question. If one of the core motivational phrases is progress, not perfection, then why is strict abstinence both expected and used as a yardstick for failure? And why does a person have to hand in their chips and start from step one if they do slip? That's a good question. They're always talking about progress, not perfection, but if you drink again, you're treated like you're scum of the earth. You come there to quit drinking, and yet that's the one thing you get punished for, is drinking. You don't get punished for dealing drugs to newcomers. You don't get punished for stealing money. You don't get punished for being a bastard who just fucks people over and just laughs their sick fucking ass off when someone relapses and commits suicide and dies. No, that's not scorned at all. There's only one sin in AA, drink again. But it's progress, not perfection. It's a strange thing. I love these questions. I hope they finish by saying they want to write more. Please do. Please do. I want to do more of these. This implies that progress means nothing if when you drink again, you have to start all over again. Yeah, you could be sober in AA technically for 20 years and get drunk. And you got to pick up a white chip and you're considered garbage. You're considered the bottom of the barrel. That's probably why most old-timers don't tell the truth when they relapse. Because progress doesn't mean shit. So my final question, they write, if perfection is both expected and meaningless, and any amount of progress doesn't actually matter, what's the point of the program at all? Whoa, great fucking question to that one. I have far more questions than these. Please write them in the comments. If you see this video, please do. I want to read them online. In fact, like I said, I've got so many good comments here lately. I've got enough video material for, I don't know how many more videos I could make on just some of these comments alone. They're great comments. Keep them coming, guys. I have far more questions than these, and I know I won't get any answers, but the contradictions abound, and since steppers are discouraged from critical thinking, I might as well ask for them while I'm here. I'm glad you did. Because literally, they make all these assertions and they make all these claims, but they have no evidence to back them up. They have no proof that any of this is real. And like I said again, outside of being a shitty human being in meetings, name me one thing AA could do that you can't do yourself out here. Trust me, I was a severe drinker. I was one of those people that was rolling out of bed at 3 a.m. And my hands shaking so bad that I couldn't get enough vodka down to stop the vomiting and the nausea, okay? I was one of those people that I've had DTs. I've been in hospitals. I've been in emergency rooms. I've been in horrible places due to fucking drinking. Now, AA is going to do their little special pleading fallacy again. They're going to say, oh, I don't know if you were a real alcoholic or not. Well, I'll tell you this. AA members who say I wasn't a real alcoholic, AA members where I was going, they didn't have no fucking problem telling me I was going to die. They didn't have no problem telling me, oh, you think you're so fucking smart, but you're going to die drunk. They didn't question whether or not I was an alcoholic then. They only question when you're an alcoholic when they can get it into some little dig in you. But questioning is not evidence. That's not evidence at all. That's just mean-spirited bullying in the name of the cult religion is always right and you're always wrong. They actually act like that you've never in your life before you got to AA ever tried to make right what was wrong. They act like never before in your life did you ever try to find people that you may have done something to and said, hey, you know, I was drunk when I did that and when I said all that dumb shit at you and I'm sorry about it or whatever. They act like you've never even experienced normal human emotions until you got to AA. And yet they have no evidence that AA has done anything that you couldn't do out here all by yourself. In terms of religion involved, AA members often accuse people of being arrogant for questioning the program. But I always thought it was funny how many AA members would openly bash religion with glee and hostility. And what they're really saying by doing that, they're saying, out of all the religions on earth, out of all the ideas about spirituality on earth, out of all the ideas that's ever come into existence from the beginning of time, when animism was first being done by Cro-Magnons in the caveman periods when they were drawing horses on caves, to now, out of all these ideas about what may lay beyond the great unknown, they're the only ones who got it right. Everybody else is just wrong. And they call me arrogant for saying their program is bullshit. I had another point that I did want to make this week. It was kind of a funny one, but I kind of lost my train of thought with that one. Maybe I'll think of it for the next video. Yeah, I guess that'll be it for this week. Chime in the comments and let me know what you think about that idea, about those questions. Doesn't it seem really weird that you even have a program if you can never get better? You can never get better, you can never graduate, you can never progress, really, unless you're just not drinking, you know. But you don't have to really work on your character defects. You don't really have to do anything. You can sit in meetings the rest of your life talking about what a sick, disgusting individual you are who's never got a hope in hell of doing anything in life without the AA program. And if you don't have the AA program, well, you're still a fucking useless, no good person who's never going to accomplish anything in life. You'll just be drunk when you're doing that. So what is the point? What's the point of the whole entire thing if you can't actually make any real progress whatsoever? And again, define what you mean by AA works. Because I don't think sitting on your ass for 20 years saying, well, I'm a sick alcoholic. I'm so sick. Let me tell you what I did the other day. I shortchanged this guy at the gas station. I told him I wanted one lottery ticket. When he wasn't looking, I tore off 5 lottery tickets. I'm sick. Only an alcoholic can do something like that. And I've been sober 25 years. I don't call that AA working. I call this a waste of fucking time. You could really be devoting your life to bettering yourself and enjoying the life you want to live on your terms, rather than wasting time in there. Until next week.